Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who tries to make the law make sense here on YouTube. Today I'm going to talk about a touchy subject because it deals with the Daniel Perry case out of Austin, Texas. And given the coverage in the national media, there are probably many of you who do not understand what really happened and who the parties are, what the issues are. So we're going to go through that this morning, and we're going to talk at great length about whether Governor Abbott should issue a pardon in this case. So join me down at the beach. This could be a fun ride. Before we get going too far here, I would like for you to look at some of the media coverage regarding the conviction.
In Austin, a jury has convicted a former Army Sergeant Uber driver who drove into a 2020 protest and shot a man to death. The verdict came after nearly 16 hours of deliberation.
A short time ago, jurors found the man who shot and killed a Black Lives Matter protester in downtown Austin guilty of murder.
Tonight, a family member of Garrett Foster is reacting to the governor's comments about pardoning Perry.
His younger sister tells KVUE News she is, quote, in shock about Abbott's tweet.
Every one of those little news stories referred to Garrett Foster, the young man who was killed, as a protester. Before I get going too far, I want to point out that I hold no animus toward Garrett Foster, and I certainly feel badly for his family and the people who loved him. It is tragic to lose anyone, and it's especially tragic to lose them in a senseless way. But in this particular instance, I think that it is worth noting that there are a lot of things that go against the media narrative of Garrett Foster as a protester. When you think of a protester, you generally think of somebody holding up a sign, walking in a march, chanting, saying things, standing up for their rights, exercising their First Amendment rights to petition for redress of grievances. And I think that that is your God-given right. You ought to be able to do that, and you ought to be able to do it free of violence. You don't get to cloak yourself in the mantle of nonviolence. Well, let me just show you a picture of Garrett Foster. You notice the mask. Most people who are on the up and up don't wear a mask in such a way as to obscure their identity. Normally, when people wear a mask to obscure their identity, they are not legitimate actors. They are up to something nefarious in most cases. He is wearing a mask. Also, take a look at this photo. Yes, he is carrying an AK-47. In none of those media vignettes did they tell you that he was carrying an AK-47 when he was shot. Neither did they tell you that he pointed that weapon at Daniel Perry. Now, what's really funny here is that the media would ordinarily refer to that as an assault weapon and would tell you that this person was armed with an assault weapon. Well, of course, the problem with that is the media doesn't know what it's talking about. Assault weapon is actually a legal term of art, and it refers to a weapon that is capable of going into 3-round burst or fully automatic fire. And that's not what an AK-47, or at least that AK-47, was capable of. It was a single-shot semi-automatic rifle. It wasn't an assault weapon. But I find the hypocrisy rather interesting in that regard. Texas has a stand your ground law, and I want to look at that with you right now. And this is the Texas stand your ground law. Self-defense, except as provided in subsection B, a person is justified in using force against another when, and to the degree the actor reasonably believes the force is immediately necessary to protect the actor against the other's use or attempted use of unlawful force. The actor's belief that the force was immediately necessary, as described by this subsection, is presumed to be reasonable if the actor 1. Knew or had reason to believe that the person against whom the force was used unlawfully and with force entered or was attempting to enter unlawfully and with force the actor's habitation, vehicle, or place of business or employment. Unlawfully and with force removed or was attempting to remove unlawfully and with force the actor from the actor's habitation, vehicle, or place of business or employment. Or C. Was committing or attempting to commit aggravated kidnapping, murder, sexual assault, aggravated sexual assault, robbery, or aggravated robbery. 2. The actor did not provoke the person against whom the force was used. And 3. Was not otherwise engaged in criminal activity other than a Class C misdemeanor that is a violation of a law or ordinance regulating traffic at the time the force was used. And Sergeant Perry is protected by Section C because Garrett Foster pointed a loaded firearm at him in his car and gave him the impression that his life was in danger. So Texas has this law, and as a result, if you are in a place where you're allowed to be and you are not the aggressor, then you are protected if you discharge your firearm in self-defense. Now, all of the stories that have been told about this shooting tell the story that Foster approached the car. The car did not run up and Perry stick his gun out the window and shoot the guy. That's not what happened. What happened was he approached the car. Garrett Foster approached the car and pointed his rifle at Sergeant Perry. Sergeant Perry was an active duty Army sergeant at the time. Reflexes honed in combat don't just go away the minute you take off the uniform. And as somebody who knew how to defend his life, he acted instinctively, I believe. Here's what we know based on the video footage, which is available. It's out there. You can go through it. I would urge you to look at the video first before you read the media narrative, because the media spins the video, and the video does not cover a lot of what actually happened. First of all, a mob surrounded Foster's car. He couldn't go forward. He couldn't go backwards. He was stuck. He was basically trying to get away. Now, the media narrative at the time of this was that he ran a red light and he deliberately drove into the crowd. And as the detective testified in court, that is not true. In fact, let's look at what the detective who actually investigated this crime said about it. He said that Foster was the only person carrying an AK-47 at the event and had 30 rounds of ammunition loaded in the rifle and 90 rounds of ammunition in his backpack. A witness testified that the shooting happened within several seconds after Perry stopped his car. Fugit, the detective, also disputed some of the descriptions of the scene that prosecution witnesses described, that suggested Perry was in a hurry to drive into the protest. He said a witness who testified that Perry maneuvered around other cars on 4th Street before he made a right turn on Congress was wrong. A video shot from a nearby building showed that Perry did not do that. Witnesses had also said Perry accelerated when he made a turn onto Congress, but the video showed that he slowed down. He also said Perry left no skid marks or tire marks at the scene. Perry was traveling on 4th Street on the night of July 25th and turned onto Congress Avenue, where a crowd marching downtown to support Black Lives Matter was. Perry stopped and several protesters approached his car, including Foster. Protesters have said they feared they were being attacked by someone in a car, which does not make sense based on the video. Perry told police that he feared for his life because Foster lifted his rifle at him, so he fired 5 shots at Foster. Now, Foster was apparently an Air Force veteran, which means that he had firearms training. He was probably trained on an M4 or an M16, depending on when he went through basic military training. He knew the rules of gun safety. He knew that you never point a weapon at something you do not intend to destroy. He also knew that in Texas, where people carry firearms on a regular basis, you don't do that unless you want to get shot. He pointed his weapon at Sergeant Perry. Sergeant Perry shot first. Now, one of the things that the prosecution claimed was that he ran a red light, and that was an act of provocation. That the judge allowed that evidence in is ridiculous for one reason and one reason only. Let's go back to the actual text of the statute. That's right. An ordinance violation is not a provocation. It is not a criminal act. And it was not a criminal act or a provocation here. The provocation, if it occurred, was Foster walking up to the car and pointing the weapon at Mr. Perry. Let's think about this. Let's take it out of a situation where you're in a protest, right? Let's say you're walking down the street and you see a man wearing a mask over his face, openly carrying a weapon, walking down the street toward you. Do you just keep going? Do you think, well, maybe he's selling Girl Scout cookies? Of course not. When you see that, the purpose behind wearing a mask and carrying a firearm like that is, of its very nature, intimidation. That is one reason why, when I carry a firearm, I don't carry it openly. I don't carry it openly because that is, in my opinion, an act of provocation. The detective apparently executed an affidavit that said that the DA had tampered with or kept information, exculpatory information, away from the grand jury that indicted Daniel Perry. And if that is the case, then, in my opinion, a pardon is the appropriate way to respond to that here. Even if you don't believe in guns, you don't believe that you should run around or that people should be allowed to conceal and carry, you certainly have to believe that we're all entitled to defend ourselves. You know, if somebody comes up and takes a swing at you, you certainly have a right to block that swing. Now, whether you take a swing in return or back up and say, hey, calm down, that's your choice. But certainly you have a right to defend yourself against any kind of violence. And that's all that Daniel Perry did here. He didn't let loose with a wild barrage. He didn't carry 90 rounds of ammunition in a backpack and 30 rounds in a rifle and run around with a mask over his face. That was the fellow he shot. If I've told you something in this video that you did not know, then you need to question the media narrative in this case. And you need to wonder why the whole story isn't being told instead of only part of the story. So I would encourage you to do that. The jury has spoken in that case. They reached a guilty verdict. I respect the jury's verdict, but I don't believe the trial was fair, and I don't believe that he should have ever been indicted. And for that reason, I believe that a pardon is the only way to remedy a wrongful conviction. And it is my fond hope that that is exactly what Governor Abbott does in this case. I know there are going to be people who disagree with me on this, and that's fine. Please try and keep your disagreement civil. And, feel free. Absolutely, come at me. It's okay. I don't mind a bit. Maybe you'll tell me something I don't know. Maybe you'll change my mind. I don't know that either. What I do know is that if you fill your disagreement with profane language or call people names, that I'm going to remove your post. I don't believe that's ever appropriate. If you can't disagree without being disagreeable, then you're probably on the wrong channel. So thank you very much for watching. I appreciate your comments, and I welcome them in this case. If you have the opportunity today, do something nice for someone, and have a marvelous day. I'll catch you down here at the beach next time.
If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.